Hello, friends. My name is Eric Cloward, and welcome to the Stoic Coffee Break. The Stoic Coffee Break is a weekly podcast where I take aspects of Stoicism and do my best to break them down to the most important points. I pull from ancient wisdom and modern wisdom, psychology, neuroscience, basically anything I can get my hands on that can help you to think better, because if you can think better, you can live better. So this week's episode is going to be a little bit different. So I have another guest on here. Justin, would you pronounce your last name for me so I don't do it incorrectly?
Yeah, Senseri.
Senseri. Thank you. Yep. And Justin has written several books on polyvagal theory and other physiological phenomena that have an impact on our mood. So I will turn the time over to Justin and let him go ahead and introduce himself a little bit more deeply, and then we'll go from there.
Hey, Justin Senseri. Thank you, Eric, for having me on. Really appreciate it. I've been listening to your podcast for a while, and just deeply appreciate this opportunity to talk in more depth about what I'm passionate about and what I know you're passionate about. The polyvagal theory is my thing. Is it okay if I just kind of get into what it is and
Absolutely
take it? Okay. It's bare bones minimum. The simplest possible one sentence description of it is polyvagal theory is how mammals respond to safety and danger. That's really the simplest. And when my client work, I'm a therapist and coach, and in my client work, that's really how I start off describing it. Definitely can get more complicated, but that's the basic. A little bit more complicated is, I'm sure you're aware of, like, there's the sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic. And traditionally, we've looked at those as if they are at odds with each other, this versus that, or maybe a balance between the two. But polyvagal theory from Dr. Stephen Porges, in his research over the past 40 decades or so, no, actually more than that, 50, 60. He has looked at, he discovered that the vagus nerve, which is where the parasympathetic runs through, there's actually two parasympathetic systems that control heart rate and come from the brainstem and really run the gamut of the body. One of those parasympathetic systems is for safety and social connection, and the other one is for life threat, where we collapse and play dead, basically. And so polyvagal theory shows us that there's three basic autonomic states that our body can exist in, and that's the safety state, the ventral vagal parasympathetic, the sympathetic flight-fight state, and then the dorsal vagal parasympathetic, which is responsible for shutdown or collapsing. So we have safety, flight, fight, and the shutdown, collapse. So those are the three basic, and it does get more complicated, and there's a mix and match between them. But that's the basic idea, is that we as mammals can exist in one of three basic states, autonomic states. And these states, no matter which one you're in, directly filters your experience of reality. It's the platform. From this autonomic platform, which is unconscious and not consciously controlled, from this autonomic platform come our thoughts, or the flavor of our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, internal bodily sensations, and also the impulses, behaviors as well. So there's all these different areas of life that I think Stoics are interested in, but psychologists are interested, therapists, researchers, and all of them stem from this state, our primary polyvagal or autonomic state. And I think that's what we don't pay attention to. I know as in my field as therapists, we don't pay attention to that. But I think if we can get a deeper understanding of that, it really fundamentally would shift how we look at our thinking, in particular, as far as Stoicism goes. But also our emotional connection with ourselves. I think mindfulness is a big part of, or can be a big part of Stoicism. So I think that all of a sudden takes on new value, or that's what I've gotten from it personally. Connection to the present moment, all these things shift fundamentally based on what state we're in, or our potential to utilize these things effectively.
Interesting. Yeah. So I've heard of polyvagal theory before, but I hadn't ever dug into it to see how it's kind of broken out into the three different systems, but I think that
Yeah.
definitely makes sense, especially because in Stoicism it's definitely a focus on the mind. I think that's one of the biggest things for sure, and a lot of that is because for lack of a better term, the technology that they had back then, they didn't understand, all of these different systems of the body because there was absolutely no way to map those.
No.
So for you, how do you see what the Stoics teach and understanding the power of the mind and how it controls a lot of your thinking? How do you see them integrated with polyvagal theory?
That's a big question. All right, let's try and tackle this. This is where my thoughts go to. We'll start here and see where it takes us, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
What pulled me toward Stoicism in particular, and I think a couple other kind of life philosophies or ways of thinking is that present moment aspect of it. It's brutal acceptance of the finiteness of life, that appealed to me. Like, it just spoke to me because it's so honest. But there is a mindfulness component to it. I think it's a big mindfulness component. When I, like most people, my real first like portal to Stoicism was the meditations. I mean, I found like YouTube stuff, and I was like, these people, it sounds like it's interesting, but I didn't really latch onto it. And then once I read meditations, it was like, whoa, I've never heard someone talk like or think like in such brutal terms, honest, blatant terms. But there was a really deep component of mindfulness to it, like when he was talking about the bread, the half, like the line down the bread, the imperfections of the present moment, the wrinkles on someone's face. I think I was, if I'm getting that correct. But it's this like appreciation for the imperfections of whatever the present moment brings to you. That to me is, I equate Stoicism with that. Like it's the finiteness of life and embracing the imperfections and beauty in the present moment and whatever it brings us. To me, that also includes our internal world, not just the way we think in our brain, but what's happening in our body. And so that's where I kind of take it, I guess, is, well, what's happening internally. And in my client work, and I think in Stoicism and just maybe in life in general, people in general, we focus on our thinking. I shouldn't think this way. I should think more positively. And that's true. I don't disagree. But that is also incomplete because there is this whole world inside of us that we don't pay attention to. We kind of exist as, I would argue, floating heads, We're aware of our thinking, but how often do we actually pay attention to how we feel? And I would argue not very much, especially as technology just consumes more and more of our attention. We're probably not paying attention to like what it feels like to be sad, to grieve, to be angry. I think we can act on those emotions, but we don't like ever truly just in the present moment embrace them and say hello to them and feel where they live in the body. And all those things come from sort of bring it back to the polyvagal theory. All those things come from our polyvagal state. When we're in our safety state, which is ideal, when we have more access to our safety state, we can breathe easier. Our physiology is just calmer. We can think clearer too. Things make sense. We can weigh pros and cons. We can plan for the future. We can take a bigger scope of reality without getting fearful or dysregulated. So I think all those Stoic goals of embracing reality and being okay with less and having our thoughts in line with the present moment or with objective reality, to me, those goals all come from, well, how much access do we have to these ventral vagal pathways? How active are they? And so if they're active enough, we get all those wonderful things. We get that calm demeanor. We have the ability to notice this like surge of maybe like anger when someone cuts us off on the road. But that's kind of it. It goes away. Our safety state allows that fluidity with our emotions. But when we don't have access, or when we have less access to our safety state, like in flight fight, we all of a sudden our thoughts become more blaming or shaming. We avoid responsibility. Our vocal tone changes. We lose the sing-songy quality of our voice, become more monotone and stern. Or in shutdown, we have more of the emotions of like depression, loneliness, sadness, heaviness. Like our state directly leads to these different experiences. And the more access we have to safety, then all of a sudden the Stoic ideals, I think, become a lot more realistic. But we have to have that access to safety. So I'm not sure if I answered your question. I kind of went from just like a train of thought. I think it tied together.
No, I definitely get that. Yeah. So for me, that's an interesting kind of moving back and forth between the two, the mental and the physical. One of the things for me that I try to remember in my own daily life, as well as people that I work with, people I coach, is that how you feel physically impacts how you think mentally to a greater degree than I think a lot of people want to give credit to. Especially Stoics, because we think that we can just think our ways out of everything.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
in control of our minds. So, but understanding that how you feel about anything, if you didn't get enough sleep, if you're hungry. I mean, I know, especially for me, when I get hungry, I
Yeah.
start getting a little bit crabby. That's why we came up with the term hangry.
Angry. Yeah.
If you have chronic pain, things that are going
Yeah.
on in your life are definitely going to color everything and the thoughts that come up with them. So, excuse me. So I think that a big part of, for me anyway, for Stoicism is understanding those things and being aware of those things so that you can make sure that you're putting up safeguards, if you will, or that you're countering those things and taking them into account so that they don't become the thing that dominates the situation. Because I think too often, we snap at somebody when we're tired or hungry or whatever, and only later on be like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I was really hungry. I was really tired.
Yeah.
But being aware of it in the moment makes it incredibly helpful to, like I said, to be able to make sure that you're taking that into consideration in your reactions and your responses to things.
Totally. Yeah. So let me introduce another concept from polyvagal theory, because I think it has a lot to do with what you're saying. This is the awareness piece of it, having awareness of what's happening internally, super important. So there's this concept of the vagal brake. The vagus nerve, the parasympathetic system, which runs through the vagus nerve, whether it's the dorsal or whether it's shutdown or safety, that directly influences the state of our heart. Okay, so in the simplest terms, when we have access to our safety state, when those ventral vagal pathways are active, it calms our heartbeat. Okay, when those pathways become less active, it, like a brake, it, like on a car, like it releases, it comes off. So as it releases from our heart, our heartbeat literally increases, the speed of it increases, and that directly leads us into flight fight activation. So when we lose access to safety, we move into flight or fight. We cannot be aware of ourselves, of the present moment, at least not accurately and with calm and compassion. We really cannot be aware of what you're talking about from a defensive state like flight or fight or shutdown. The safety pathways have to be active. When they're active, heartbeat will maintain a calm enough pace. It will be contained, or it'll be regulated. And as long as our heartbeat is regulated or calm enough, then we have way more connection to the present moment, and that includes hunger, or having to use the restroom, or a spike of anger when someone cuts us off on the road. But we have to have the vagal brake active, and I think the problem that we have with how we think in general, and what I think Stoicism misses, kinda, but also therapists who focus more on cognitive interventions, we kind of look at this as if all of us have the same baseline, and person A is just thinking wrong. And person B is like, you should think this way. And that's not incorrect, but it's just not the full picture. And so person B says, well, just think this way. And person A, who's thinking wrong, ideally would say, oh, thank you so much. Oof. Let me just take one thought out and put one thought in. But that's not the way it works. Because person A, in their system, may have more flight-fight activation. Their vagal brake is weaker. And the polyvagal theory and Dr. Porges do all these like studies to validate all this stuff. It's certain measurements with respiratory sinus arrhythmia and vagal efficiency and all this stuff. So person A, who has maybe like more flight-fight activation, who's chronically more aggressive or anxious, they would present as like an anxiety disorder. They would present as some sort of anger issue. That person is less capable at a baseline of adopting a new mindset, of adopting a new way of thinking, of listening to anybody in a way that would be productive for them, sadly. That person is fundamentally, their filter of reality is like they're in danger. So person A in flight fight, their thinking is going to be more blaming. So when person B comes along and says, oh, you need to have more of an expansive view. You need to look at your situation from above, maybe. Person A is going to be like, what the F are you talking about? Back off. Leave me alone. Like, they're not open. They don't have the capacity to adopt a new way of thinking, to think critically. And I think that's a rampant issue globally. Person A, who has person B, I've got my, person B, who has that way of thinking that's probably more healthy, they have a stronger vagal brake. Their safety state, their vagal brake is active. And so they can hear where someone else is coming from without taking it personally. They can think critically. Like right now, hopefully you and I have a lot of, person A-hood going on, which is our vagal brakes are on. We're able to listen to each other. We can smile. If we were in person, we'd probably, handshake at least, maybe a little dap. We could get close to each other. We could smile. We can make eye contact. Person A, we can do all these things. We can reflect on philosophical issues. We can reflect on ourselves and not blame others. We can take radical accountability. We can have that locus of control. That's not a problem for us, as long as our vagal brake, our safety state is active. But person B, they cannot do that. Those skills are off the table. They cannot do those things. So when we look at things as thinking disorders or an issue with you're not thinking right, we're assuming there's a baseline that person A and B can work from, and there's not. There could potentially be a baseline if person B works on themselves and, connects more to the present moment and self-regulates. They can have that more safety in their system. But until then, they're fundamentally at a different place than person A.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think so.
No, I think so, because this kind of explains some things for me, because I grew up in a fairly violent home, but it was very random. So it was only like 20% of the time, but it was unpredictable. And it was, my dad would be having a bad day about something, and then, we're always constantly, checking his mood all the time, make sure everything's good, because everything will be fine. And then 60 seconds later, you're getting hit with a belt. And so I think for a long time, I was definitely kind of stuck in that fight or flight state,
of course,
just as part of a natural thing. And it's taken a long time to work through that, for sure. But I feel like I'm definitely in a much more safety state, or at least being aware of when I'm feeling, in one of the other states, and being able to just compensate for that. So that's kind of interesting. So what does it take for somebody to kind of move into that place? What are the, if it's a physiological thing, what are the things they can actually do? I mean, obviously, like we talked about before, making sure the physiological things are taken care of, that you're getting enough sleep, that you're, if you have chronic pain, all of those kind of things. I kind of list those as just table stakes of, if you're maintaining your health and doing those type of things, that's definitely going to help raise that quite a bit. Because if your body is not in physiological distress, then it makes it much easier for it to heal.
Let me make it more complicated, though, if I may. Because I agree with you. I would call those bare bones, like we have to do these things. And yet, for the person who's stuck in flight, fight, for them to settle down and go to bed at a decent hour and to calm down and go to sleep, that requires they have access to their safety state. Because the safety state, again, calms the heartbeat, it slows it down. And actually, when we go to sleep, the other parasympathetic system slows it way down, but it keeps our, basic functioning going while we're asleep. So, that's really important. But the person who has less safety state access, it's harder for them to do that, which really sucks. Because that is good advice. Like, you should go to bed earlier. And they'd be like, yeah, idiot, no kidding. I can't. When I go to bed, I cannot settle down. I have to have the TV on. I have to have a white noise machine going. And so, that's true that, yeah, more sleep's a good idea, but can I do that tonight? Maybe not. So what can they do? That's what the question comes down to. Because in no way do I believe that things are hopeless. If I did, I should probably change my profession. I don't believe that whatsoever. You touched upon with your own, and I appreciate you sharing your own history. You touched upon, and I think you called it natural. I lived in a flight fight as a natural result of my life context, which is exactly right. We develop, not just emotionally, not just in our thinking, on a nervous system, unconscious level, we adapt based on the needs of survival. In this context, especially in childhood, in order to survive, I had to be hyper aware. My body, not that we chose it, my body existed in a hyper aware fight state, in order to get my needs met. And so if that is our upbringing, that doesn't really change unless generally we start to address it. And then, I don't know how you did that, but you obviously have addressed that to some degree, to a great degree, I'm assuming. And so typically that might look like therapy. Maybe it's Stoicism. Maybe it's like a journal practice. Maybe it's just meditation and mindfulness, whatever. But we have to bravely address what's going, where we're at. And so that's the general answer, which I think everyone probably knows, so it's not super helpful. For what I'm saying, in order to come out of, because it's not like we have, you didn't grow up, not just you, but just in general. It's not like, you had the flight fight activation and then you returned to safety and life is good and you're hugging this person and that person, think critically and studying, and maybe that was you, I don't know. But it's not like we kind of enter, especially in childhood, it's not like we just enter into flight fight and then recover and enter and recover. We enter it and then maybe try to recover, but then the nervous system learns, I can't recover because this thing's going to happen again. And so every time the body tries to self-regulate some external force, like a parent, it's just nope, you cannot exist in your safety state. Here's a little bit of balance for you. Here's some neglect. Here's shame, whatever, fill in the blank. And so the nervous system learns, I cannot, and I'm saying learns, but I'm giving it agentic capability. It's not like that. So the nervous system develops based on the context. And so that person is chronically in flight, fight, or shutdown. Shutdown is the next level after flight, fight. It's a sequential thing. So how does that person come out of that? It's very much possible. That's what I am devoting my life to. Very much possible, but fundamentally they have to have more safety in their system. So that means being with safe people, safe enough people, and that can include pets. Other mammals, basically. Mammals have a capacity to heal. And I think Stoicism knows that. There's this intrinsic connection. And I think Stoics would say that we're thinking rational creatures, therefore we belong together. And correct me if I got that wrong. But there is this knowing of the sociality is actually really important. I think Stoics know that. I know they know that. And so that is healing. It's fundamentally, it's called co-regulation. It's another Polyvagal thing. It's healing. When we smile and when we share smiles, when you or whoever else, when we smile with each other, we have these little crinkles that form with a genuine smile. We have crinkles that form. They're called the crow's feet, basically. our upper cheeks move, our eyebrows can move, our face animates. And when someone who's in like more of a flight fight state sees that, it's called the safety cue. It triggers their system a little bit, maybe not much, but a little bit. So having that consistent co-regulation, even from a dog, maybe a cat, it helps actually a little bit. It helps the system have a bit more safety. So safe people, safe animals, maybe safe environments. I think intuitively, actually I know, intuitively we know that, like at work, maybe I'm not feeling like super safe and social, right? But when I go to a beach, man, it just feels right. When I go to a forest, it's like you feel it, because the body in those really big situations, those environments, there's a massive shift because there is something about it. And I think Stoics would very much agree that having that simple nature connection is very healing as well. So safe people, safe environments are a huge part of the equation. And if you don't have that, there's more stuff you should do. I would recommend, like honestly connecting with how you feel. And when you do that, it allows the process of self-regulation, which is your body coming out of that stuck defensive state and really releasing the pains, like on a very literal level, releasing the pains within. But that's not easy to do. So I guess to sum up, the answer is we have to have more safety. We get more safety by safe people or pets and safe environments. And once we have those things, then we pay attention to how we feel, and we gradually release that stuck defensive activation.
Yeah, that sounds very similar to kind of how I think things progressed for me. After my parents got divorced, it was kind of like, I was 20 at the time, but it was kind of like a turning point in a way. We could finally talk about all of the shit that had been going on, so there was first that, okay, yeah, we've been living under this fear and this cloud for so long, and we just kind of took it as normal. And now that it's not there, it was just like, we could finally talk about it, because we didn't really talk about it that much until after my parents got divorced. Then it was just like, okay, here's all this crap that's just been sitting there, and we've been ignoring it for so long. And that was, and because now we had a safe space where we could actually, point it out and say, look, this has been going on. This is ridiculous. Why did we put up with this? And yeah. So that was definitely a big start, kind of getting on that path. But yeah, unfortunately, even with the therapy that I had back then, 30 years ago when that happened, it was still, I don't think it's really been until the last probably about 4 years that I was finally able to kind of nail down a lot of the elements in such a way that I could actually do something about it. It's like I thought I had healed a lot of those things, only to mess up other relationships, still be angry about a lot of things. And that's why for me, Stoicism was such a, it came at a good time. And, maybe if I'd found it earlier, it would have helped along the path sooner. But it just made sense. There were just so many things where I was like, okay, that's the clearest explanation I've ever heard about, like the dichotomy of control. Like, there are all these things in life that you don't have control over, so stop trying to control them. Oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But, excuse me. But what does that actually mean? What do I have control over? And it's like, well, you have control over the way that you think about things, your perspective on things, the beliefs that you choose to follow, and your choices and actions. And that's about it. Everything else is outside of your control. And while that was kind of scary, it was also kind of healing in the way that, or not just the healing, but at least it gave me a sense of, oh, all this stuff that it's out there, I don't have to worry about so much of it. I can just focus on these few things. And if I get really good at those things, then things will start to change a bit more. And so I find that Stoicism oftentimes has a very Occam's razor approach, in that, sometimes the simplest definition or the simplest solution or answer is the best. don't overcomplicate things. And that for me was just
yeah.
really, really helpful in, again, having grown up Mormon, and there was this whole giant theology of this is the way the world works, and we're giving you all these answers, and this is the truth.
Yeah.
And it was complicated. It didn't fit with a lot of my own morals and perspectives on things. And it was just like, yeah. And so leaving that behind was also, I think, a big healing aspect as well. So
I could see that. Do you mind if I ask, are you still Mormon, or are you still a believer in some religion, or are you atheist?
yeah, I'm pretty much agnostic atheist. I'm open to the idea that there are things far beyond our comprehension. I really enjoy physics, and I watch physics videos all the time because I find it incredibly fascinating. And there are just things that we learn that just seem absolutely mind-bogglingly crazy, but they're true, and we can prove that they're true. And so I'm like, okay, if you told this to somebody 100 years ago, 200 years ago, they would have carted you off to the loony bin. But yet here we have this proof of something that seems completely wild and outrageous, but it's true nonetheless. And so I'm like,
yeah,
okay, so I can be okay with the fact that there is possibly something that is greater out there than us. And
like a being, like a creator being?
A being, a force, who knows what. It doesn't...
Okay.
But anybody who tells you that they know what happens after, that they have all the answers, I don't believe them, because until you can give me some kind of proof, I'm not going to believe it. And so that's why I'm kind of on the agnostic. I'm open to the possibilities. But do I believe that there's something there? No. Would it be nice to that after we die, if we go somewhere that's wonderful and beautiful and amazing? Sure, that would be great.
That'd be great.
But I don't have any real proof of that. And so, so I'm going to live this life the best I can, be the best person I can be, not because I'm trying to gun my way, I'm gunning for heaven, if you will. I'm doing it because living that way makes my life better now. Being an ethical person, trying to make good choices, practicing compassion and kindness. It just makes the world around me better, and so I get to live in that better world. And that's and that's one of the things that I think so many people miss when they're just too self-focused, is that when you give to your society and your world around you, it makes it a better world, and you get to live in that world.
There's a direct impact,
Yeah.
Just, kindness is nice, but even the little interactions that we share with each other, which I think are healing for us, but also for others, it directly impacts that person on a very nervous system level. It when we say brightens their day, like, it is a tiny moment. It maybe doesn't fix their whole life, I know that, but those little things directly impact their well-being. Yeah. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah,
if it's a small act.
Yeah, I see it as, it's that tiny thing which just slightly changes the direction of a person's day. And it might only be just like a half a degree, but if you're on a boat and you're sailing, somewhere and you're half a degree off, that over a long enough time, that can actually be a very big distance of landing here versus landing here.
Sure.
So
for sure.
Anyway,
no,
a little bit of a tangent we got off there.
It's a tangent, but connected. My mind went to, this might be morbid, sorry, but I've read of or heard of like killers or like school shooters or whatever who did not shoot that one person because that person said hello to them, or they didn't kill themselves that day. Someone who's suicidal didn't because like the school front desk person said hi. Like, that being seen is not just nice, it's healing. It's extremely important and has a direct and very profound impact on one's well-being. Yeah, I guess to reiterate.
Yeah.
Sorry if that was too morbid.
No. I've heard the same thing of,
right?
People who are just like on their way home from the store and they're like, okay, this is it, this is the end. And, as they're leaving, somebody says, hey, have a nice day, and genuinely mean it. Or, compliment them on something like, wow, I really like that shirt. It looks great on you. And they're like, oh, I'm seen. Somebody, okay. And just that little...
Yeah, that's the top down, the cognitive explanation is I'm seen. That's the narrative. That's the story, the words in our brain. But on a deeper level, it's when someone says that, there's the crinkle in their eyes, there's the prosody, the sing-songy quality of their voice. There's maybe a gentle like pat on the back or maybe some safe distance, but like there's all these little nonverbal things that pierce the other person on a brainstem level that they are not consciously aware of. But they do, the shift does happen. And then in their brain, it's like, I'm seen. That's the story of the experience, the internal experience.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do is, this helps me when I remember to do it, is when I'm walking down the street anywhere, because I don't have a car right now, so I have to walk or ride my bike everywhere, is that I do my best to smile at everybody that I walk past. Just give them a big old smile and make eye contact.
That's awesome.
And it's interesting for me just to watch how many people are just kind of like, neutral face. And then when I smile at them and, make eye contact, they're like, oh, hey.
Yep.
And
it's huge. Yeah. Like that's a testament to your level of safety in your system. You're willing or not. It's not willingness. Maybe a bit of it is. It's not just a behavior that you're doing in your body on a polyvagal level, on an autonomic brainstem level. Your body is primed for social connection. And then your body is able to execute on eye crinkles and vocal prosody and eye contact. If you did not have that priming for social connection, you would not be able to do those things, at least not genuinely. Maybe you'd fake it. You kind of feel it when someone, I think, unless they're really good at faking it. There's a way you can fake your way through these on a behavioral level, I suppose. But what you're describing is my body's in this state enough, and I'm listening to that enough, and so I'm going to act on it enough, and then directly impact somebody else in a positive way and receive that positivity in return, and it just kind of feeds this system of, or at least the dyad between the two people.
So I'm curious, when you start working with a client who's stuck in one of the other two, let's call them more negative modes, I guess kind of two questions. One, do you find it, trying to think of the best way to explain this. Do you find that they have a challenge of understanding how their body feels? And if that's the case, how do you help them to do that? And then kind of expanding beyond that, what are some ways that you move them from that? Or is it really just once they start reconnecting with their own body in a certain way that they're able to move forward? And is that kind of a gradual, just a natural process?
Well, it is a natural process, but I would argue that we are all very far removed from our natural processes. So there is a natural, you and I and everybody else has this self-regulation impulse within us at all times. Every species on Earth and beyond does, because that is the ideal functioning for ourselves, as take our thoughts out of our brain, take the tools out of our hands. We are biological organisms who must self-regulate, just like my dog, just like the squirrels that run around outside chasing each other. So that is on a biological level, that's very natural is what I'm saying. That is the natural compulsion that is always there if we listen to it. The problem is we don't listen to it. And so when we look inward at our emotions, it feels extremely unnatural. So there's that. That's a huge obstacle, is getting someone to see the value in it, or understand that, see the value in it, kind of really depending on how much safety they have in their. So when someone comes to me and they have, a healthier upbringing, they're more likely to take this in and run with it. Someone who has more severe traumatic upbringing, it's going to be a lot more difficult. And then even if they get it, like a lot of the people that listen to my podcast, even if they get it, cognitively, it's like, okay, I get it. I get that I am in a defensive state, like flight, fight, and I get that I'm supposed to feel more safety, and I get that I'm supposed to like mindfully pay attention to my activation so I can release it and self-regulate. I get it, but my God, how do I do that? And then I can tell them, we'll do, pay attention to your feelings. Well, God, how do I do that? And so there's all these walls, I guess, or that we as humans have done to each other, that we adopt, that we continue, all these like behavioral things, cognitive things that we do that stop. the process, the natural process of self-regulation, because it's not necessarily comfortable. It can be a very uncomfortable process if we're not prepared for it. So if someone comes to my office and I'm like, hey, let's feel your feelings, let's do this. Tell me the most horrible things that have happened to you in life and let's just plow through it. That is going to be extremely dysregulating for them, even though it might, paying attention to how you feel is generally helpful. But my God, that's going to be extremely dysregulating and upsetting. I mean, that's to put it mildly. That's going to re-traumatize them, and they won't have the capacity to do that. So to help someone like that, what I do is focus more on the safety aspect of things. We do like small behavioral changes in life, like getting to bed earlier, 15 minutes earlier this week. Let's do that. Instead of 12, let's do 11:45. And if we could do that for 1 week, that's like a Kaizen approach. I don't know. Have you ever heard of a Kaizen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 1%
so like,
improvement.
can we get to bed? Yeah. 15 minutes might be too much to ask. But, can we do 11:45 for 1 week? Awesome. Can we do 11:30 the next week? Lovely. So like, if we can do those little steps, that's a behavioral change that hopefully doesn't trigger the dysregulation, the fear. So that's behavioral change. But as far as like what I'm talking about, the deeper emotional work, that's something we have to like really tiptoe into. A lot of times, it depends on someone's capacity. And so we have to kind of tiptoe into it. And the priority is always, how can we practice feeling safe? How can we practice feeling safety? And usually that what it boils down to for most of my clients, because none of us ever do this, is I'm not going to ask someone to go to the beach every day. That's too much. Although I've had clients that have like lived close to beaches, and so they have that, and it's like they just soak it up day after day, and it really just feeds the soul, the system, And that's the huge boost in the right direction. But for most of us who don't have a beach or a forest nearby, well, can you step outside of your house for 30 seconds and take in one intentional breath and let it out slower? It's not much, but that might be the start of it. Can you, instead of, binging on TikTok, can you spend 30 seconds before binging on TikTok and like mindfully smell a candle in your room? Again, like how close can we get to the present moment without distractions, without making ourselves feel better? How can we just experience the present moment and the safety that comes along with it? That's really the first step to try to like break, to try to have an impact, Because once someone gets that of like, oh, when I smelled the candle, I really did slow down. I noticed my breathing became easier. My muscle tension kind of eased up. Once we can do that, we can snowball it, and we can like build on it, and we can more intentionally, mindfully feel into what it feels like to be safe in like in my therapy room. And if we can do that and practice that, and actually I do a 8-week cohort that like walks people through this. So if we can feel safe, well, can we hold on to that long enough to now start paying attention to some discomfort? A little bit at a time. There's all these like skills I go through. But like that would be the sequence, is if we can feel safe enough, can we now bring a little bit of curiosity over to your anxiety or the anger that you use against, lashing out against your kids, like yelling at them every night to go to bed or something. If we can feel safe enough, can we now notice on a somatic body level, like, what does it feel like to be sad, to feel alone? And those are hard feelings, but can we pay attention to those a little bit? And if we can do that, the body will respond. It'll give you what you're seeking, and it'll say, here's your aloneness, boom. And so we want to approach these uncomfortable feelings in just tiptoes. Like we want to like just gradually work our way there, feel it, and we anchor in safety. So we feel in the present moment. We utilize our senses. We notice where safety lives in the body, all that nice stuff. And then we notice where does sadness live in the body. But we do it to a tolerable level. Just kind of notice it, feel it, take a snapshot of it, and then come on back over to, okay, how do I feel as far as my safety aspect goes? Let's get back in touch with that. And so that process of safety, defense, safety, you can repeat that as many times as you want, but at a minimum, safety, defense, safety, it's called a neural exercise. It's like you have safety, you take it away, and then you bring it back consciously and intentionally. And that's like you're putting the reps in. You're exercising and strengthening your safety pathways. just like you would anything else. That would be a way to gradually help someone get unstuck and open the process of self-regulation.
Interesting. I like
But
that
it's a
idea.
process.
Yeah, I like that idea of the way to kind of ground your body is to do it through somatic or physical means, not just thinking about it. That like doing a candle, going for a walk.
Yeah.
I find that really interesting. So
Using your senses, yeah.
and
And
then
to me, that is. I'm sorry, go ahead. I
yeah, go
apologize.
ahead.
To me, that I feel like there would be. I assume there's a nice connection to Stoicism there, where it's just you in the present moment and focusing on your senses. Like, it's funny that I'm reading the Seneca's letters to a Stoic, letters from a Stoic,
Mm-hmm.
and there's little glimpses of this where I feel like he's touching upon it without really, at this level, I guess. And hope that doesn't sound egotistical, but it's like he'll talk about his villa that he goes to where he feels, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, we go to the beach to feel better, and he has a villa like on a cliffside or one or two villas or whatever, and like, yeah, that's it. It's just you in this experience that is the present moment, and so there's some areas like that villa or the beach or the forest or maybe the local library where it's just like, it's just me in the present moment. And if we can do that, there's so much good that can come from it.
Yeah, I think it's almost like training yourself to get out of your head, to be in your body, to be there.
Yeah.
Then that gives you the strength to be able to deal with all the things rattling around in your head.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And what you'll notice is if you do this process, instead of fighting a thought or trying to make it go away or trying to replace it, what you'll notice is as if you can anchor into your safety state through these like sensory and somatic practices, or mindfulness and meditation practices, really, if you can feel, like I feel this sense of, sorry, am I stuttering here? Is my thing choppy?
It was
okay?
for a second, but I think we're good.
Okay. So if you can do these really like mindfulness meditation practices, and you can feel like, oh, I feel this sense of calm and it lives right here in my chest. If you can get to that point, you'll feel this sense of connection, of softening. And then what you'll notice is that thought that I've been battling, it's no longer here. I don't have to battle it. It's just not there. When I'm dysregulated, or if I'm in my like flight fight activation, or just in general, we have more thoughts of like blame and shame and whatnot. Changing those thoughts is extremely difficult, I would argue. But if you can anchor into safety, notice how it lives in your body, all of a sudden those thoughts are simply not there. They're not present because the autonomic platform of the body has shifted. So just to like hopefully solidify this, when you're in flight fight, you're more likely to punch somebody in the face, right? Your body is primed for that activity or for running away. When you're in your safety state and you're grounded and you feel that like warmth in your chest and you feel the sense of emotional expansiveness, your body is not primed to punch somebody in the face. It is not on the table. It will not enter your mind. And the thought of it might bring disgust if like someone thought, it encouraged you to punch somebody in the face. You'd be like, oh, what? It would not compute because the body is fundamentally in a different state. So it's not just behaviors like punching somebody in the face, but it's also, why would I think negatively of myself when I feel like this? I couldn't comprehend that thought entering my brain. I couldn't comprehend obsessing about what someone on TikTok is doing. Like, what do I care? That makes no difference in my life whatsoever. And isn't it wonderful outside? And yeah, I'm going to die. I better appreciate this present moment as much as I can and the relationship I have in my life. Like all those things come from that platform of safety.
Yeah. And it's interesting as you were talking through some of that, it reminded me of after I got divorced, this was 20 years ago. So I'm a cyclist. And so for me, that was basically my way of dealing with a lot of that was, I'd ride into work and then I'd take the long way home. And so I was riding 150, 200 miles a week. And, Yeah, I was in great shape. I think I lost probably within about 3 months, I lost like 20 pounds, and it was the leanest I'd been
Yeah.
since high school. And
Oh wow.
but I just found that being out on the bike, being out on the road, and it was during the summer, so I mean it was great riding,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
because it was really hard to get distracted by anything else, because the only things that I could focus on were, some of the thoughts wandering through my mind for some
Sure.
time, but I had to focus on the road. I could see the scenery, make sure I wasn't getting hit by cars, other things like that. So there's all
Yeah.
of these
Yeah. Yeah.
other things, but being out there and just, you know, and the other thing for me is that I hit flow states all the time when I'm out riding, just because it's kind of the best way to describe, people always like, how can you do that? Why would you do that? I'm like, it's the closest thing that I can get to flying without being in a plane,
Yeah.
because it's just smooth. It's just, you're cruising along at a speed, you're under your own power. And when everything
Yeah.
kind of lines up, when your muscles are firing just right, your breathing is really good, and you're on a nice, strong flat
Yeah.
stretch or some nice rolling hills, and everything is in sync. It's just this amazing feeling. Like I said, it feels like you're almost flying along
Yeah.
this road, and I found that was incredibly healing for me. When I was,
Yeah. Oh yeah. I could see that. You're like you were giving your body an avenue to release the pains inside. I would assume.
yeah,
Yeah. That's people who have more flight fight, more activation. They tend to be pulled toward activities that are, more movement based. That totally makes sense. I have worked with a client who, maybe similar to you actually, where a guy who would go to the gym 3 to 6 hours a day and just like go until he was exhausted. But he had a ton of childhood trauma that he could not, wasn't even aware that it was still affecting him. But he knew that when I go to the gym, this is where I'm able to get some sort of release. It wasn't permanent. I think it always just kind of came right back because he wasn't doing it mindfully. He wasn't paying attention to the experience of it. But at the gym, he would have movement. He would have an outlet. But he also had people that were encouraging him and smiling at him. And so that was like a safe place in a sense. And then after the gym, he'd go like run 10 miles. It was absurd to most, people day to day.
yeah,
But his state was so intense and like his motor was just on until he got to the point of exhaustion, really. And that was not the same as safety, but I think his body was telling him there's something about this activity and these people and this environment that just kind of feels right. He wasn't alone. There were smiles, there was encouragement, there was laughter, there was storytelling, pats on the back, I'm sure. So there was lots of co-regulation and connection. So I think his body knew there's something about this place that I just kind of am pulled towards. And it's different for everybody. But there's also the movement aspect of it. Like I can release this pain through exertion. If he had paid attention to it, it probably would not have been a 6-hour daily thing. He probably still would have liked to work. It probably would have felt good, but he probably would have been more content had he paid attention to the experience of working out versus just mindlessly working out, which is hard to do.
yeah. I mean, sometimes we use things as a distraction, and maybe that was part of it.
Oh, yeah.
That if I'm lifting, then if I'm mad about something, I can just put it into the lift rather than yelling at my kids or whatever it was that was
Oh, yeah.
was hard for him. Yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah, so as a behavioral intervention, that's great.
Yeah,
I would much rather someone work out than yell at their kids. Heck yeah, that's a great intervention. But as a means to heal, that there's another level we can get to, I guess is the idea.
yeah. So it sounds like there needs to be that combination of doing the physical work to reconnect with it, and obviously lifting weights or cycling or whatever it is you're definitely in your body and you're working with that. But then it's taking that and moving up to that mental step and being able to start to heal those things that cause the physical to be dysregulated. And so, but I think you kind of get that virtuous cycle over time.
I think if someone if they notice that like I'm over exerting myself as a means to cope, that's fine. Like, do you? No judgment whatsoever. And but the next time that you go to the gym or you go running or cycling or whatever, what if you did 1 rep or 2 reps and really felt what it was that you were coping with. Like, what if you intentionally felt that anger and slowly did that movement, that push, and like that level of mindfulness may open up a different type of a release. The sympathetic activation, the body's like priming of it can actually release and shift. So it would feel, the experience of it's a lot different. It's you feel this like discharge from the system versus just going. So if someone can slow down, and I wouldn't do this with like super heavy weights at all, but like you don't want to go fast either, but can you find a weight or a speed that there's resistance? And so instead of like, lifting like super fast, what if you found a weight that was enough of a resistance to where you just kind of slowly felt, you did the movement and you felt the resistance and you pushed back against the resistance. That level of mindfulness is what we're trying to get at. That level of mindfulness and connection to your muscles in the present moment. The clutter of the mind is gone at that point, and the mind, the brain, the conscious thought is now connected with what's happening bottom up. So bottom up matches top down. That's what we want, and it meets the brainstem. And if that can happen, the brainstem's like, freaking finally, thank you for, decluttering your brain and focusing on how the body feels. Now we can shift state. Now we can release this shit we can release this stuff that we've been holding on to for decades. Maybe not all in one sitting, but over time we can release this as you pay attention to how I feel, to personify the brainstem.
So
Sorry if swearing is not welcome on the podcast.
No, it's fine.
I forgot. Okay.
It reminds me of, this is a crazy incident, but I think it fits right along with this. So back, I guess it was probably 99, 2000, I think. No, I think it was like 2001 probably, now that I've kind of tapping the timeline there. I used to be very out of shape. Before I picked up cycling, I reached a point where I was 210 pounds and I'm only 5'7". So not good by any means. And I was working for a company out in Minnesota, and I remember I was having numbness in my feet on both sides. And so I went in to see a doctor about that. I went to a podiatrist at first, and he was just like, oh no, this is a back issue. And I was like, it is? He's like, yeah, we'll get you into PT for your back. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Kind of strange. And I still have the numb spots. It actually shorted out the nerves for some reason. So it doesn't hurt. Wow. It's just I have numbness on the sides of my feet. And I was like, okay, I can live with it. I can still walk. Everything, I can feel around it, but the direct sensation is just kind of like how when you have Novocaine and you're touching your cheek.
Yeah.
But I remember I went to the physical therapist, a guy named Frank, and as we were talking, he was like, okay, so what do you do for a living? I'm like, I'm a software developer. And he's just like, oh, one of the worst things you can do for your back. And I was like, what? He goes, it's one of the worst careers for your job or for your back. And I was just okay. And so he worked on my back a bit, and some hot and cold packs, other things like that. And then he says, okay, before the next session, next time you're sitting at work and you are just sitting there, I want you to notice how much your back hurts. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
And so the next day I'm sitting there at work, and I was busy typing away, and it was a little bit before lunch, and that thought popped in my head of like, does your back hurt? And I was like,
yeah.
Does my back hurt? I don't think my back hurts. And then suddenly I was paying attention to my body, and suddenly I realized how much my lower back hurt from just sitting for 3 hours at a time in that chair. And I was just like, oh my, holy crap. And I stood up and I was just like, how did I not notice this? How could I be so out of touch with my own body that I was in that much pain and I didn't even notice it, that I had totally blocked it out? And so the next time I saw him, I said, holy crap, my back was killing me. And he goes, I kind of thought it would be. And I said, why didn't I notice it? He's just like, there are a lot of reasons why we do stuff like that. But yeah, you're a little bit out of touch with your body. And it was very interesting that I had been in that much pain for so long, and I just completely blocked it out. And it floored me. Like now I can't even imagine that. Like I'm very much in tune with my body.
Right.
And shortly after this time was when I got into cycling and totally changed my diet and my health. But yeah, it was amazing to me how much it really hurt. And I just was completely unaware
Seriously.
of it.
Yeah, there's stuff that, and in no way am I like perfect on this, but there's stuff all day, every day. Our body's sending us signals that our conscious mind is just not picking up on it. But it's there. If we listen, it's there. I have a little community I run, and we're doing a digital mindfulness challenge, and the challenge is every week to notice, like for week one, it was when you're using social media, pause for 30 seconds and notice, like on day one, do you actually like it or not? And most people were like, I don't like this, but I keep doing it. And day two, it was what happens in your breathing. And so they would pause and notice I'm holding my breath more often than not, or it's very shallow and tight for no reason. Like there's no reason for that. Well, it's the stimulation maybe, and I don't know, judgment and danger cues. I don't know. And then day three, it was like, notice your muscle tension. And they would notice I'm tense. My chest is like, there's pressure on it. I'm tenser. Day four is, are you more or less likely to smile? And no. So the point is there's all these things happening within us that we have no idea about. We just kind of keep doing the thing because it feels good in a way, but it's not. If we really paid attention in that moment, it really doesn't feel good. Like it's not a good experience. Point is tons of stuff that we're missing out on. And when I watch the 49ers, I have no idea what's happening in my body. I'm just pissed off if they're losing.
Yeah. So I think it kind of in summary is the more in tune you get with your body, the more you are here in the present moment and in reality.
Yeah. Yeah. The present moment and the body, sensory inputs. If we can get there, like there's a lot of good that can happen. I think that directly connects with the Polyvagal stuff I'm talking about, but I think directly connects with Stoicism. I think the most beautiful moments of the meditations were that's what spoke to me about it was Marcus not chastising himself for not thinking right or not doing good enough or not being the man he wants to be, but it was those moments of like just honest reflection without I should be this way, I shouldn't be that way. It's just this moment. That really spoke to me, even about death. Like I think that directly connects with what I believe is like really the heart of Stoicism. That's my take from it, at least.
I agree. All right. Well, I think we're coming up on time here. Is there any last thing you want to say to my audience, and also let them know where they can find you online? Just become more curious if you can. Although I'm asking them to change their thoughts, really. Change your behaviors. For 30 seconds today, can you step outside, take one intentional breath, let it out slower on the way out, and maybe notice what you feel as best you can. And if the best you can do is say I feel something kind of good, okay. Or if the best you can do is I feel something kind of bad, and you're just like honestly acknowledging that, well, good job. Then head back on in the house, and you're done for the day. So can you do one little thing today that is more mindful, more present moment than it was yesterday? Just a very, very tiny step. I think it's a good starting point. As far as where to find me, stucknotbroken.com. My podcast is the same name, but if you go to stucknotbroken.com, everything's there. Right. Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast. This was really interesting. I think for me, it was really great to kind of connect the mental with the physical in such an interesting way. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I love this stuff.
Yeah.
I love this stuff. The book, the Polyvagal Theory book, the first one is thick academic studies, research paper kind of just all put together, all of his work. The first chapter, though, when I started reading it, very hard to read, but the first chapter was about mind and body, which I was like, why is he starting with that? But it makes sense to me now that this is a direct connection, mind and body. Yeah. And I think we missed that. All right. So that's the end of this week's Stoic Coffee Break. As always, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and thanks for listening. Also, if you haven't purchased my book, Stoicism 101, I would really appreciate if you would. You can find more information on my website at stoic.coffee. Can I endorse your book real quick?
Sure.
Is that okay? Did you stop recording?
Yeah,
you
I'm still
there?
recording.
Did you stop recording? Okay. Yeah, I bought the audiobook. I'm really enjoying it. I love that it's a lot of times when I'm reading about Stoicism, I have to what's that thing? Virtue. What the heck does virtue mean again? And so your book is like, it really is the 101. So I highly recommend it. And the audio version is just as pleasant as the podcast.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
interesting. One of my only bad reviews on Amazon was, this is so repetitive. And I'm like, that's kind of the point. Because I didn't want people to have to go back every time to go, oh, wait, what was virtue? What was this dichotomy of control? And so I would say the dichotomy of control, what you can control and what you can't control, then continue on. And so I did that purposefully because I knew that, one, you're learning it, or two, you might have just picked up the book and read a chapter randomly, and I don't want to have to I don't want you to have to go
That makes
all
sense.
the way back to find it. So I'm
It's a
glad that
it's a
worked.
non-issue. It's a non-issue completely. No, I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, good. All right.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Also, you should follow me on social media. I know that we talk about the evils of social media, but it's how I reach other people. So if you want to give me a like or subscribe, I would really appreciate it. You can find me at Instagram and Threads at stoic.coffee and YouTube, YouTube, Facebook, X, all of the others at Stoic Coffee, all one word. Thanks again for listening.